let's get into it. Let's talk about jeggings. So jeggings, as you guys know, have been a wardrobe staple forever and ever. They are the perfect balance between comfort and style. But because of that, I think that in ready-to-wear options, a lot of shortcuts can be taken that make them not as ideal for us, especially if we don't have straight bodies, if we have curves and things like that. So we are going to be talking about making your own jeggings to get the fit you want, the exact look you want, and then obviously being able to use quality materials to make sure they last for a really long time. So what makes a jegging? Now, I know that the term jegging is used a little bit loosely, especially in ready to wear. But in my opinion, a jegging is a combination between a jean and a legging. And I've never, ever seen a legging that has a zipper. So in my opinion, a jegging is a pull-on pant with no hardware, no zippers, no buttons, no closures whatsoever. So that is what we are going to be focusing on today. My hair is doing something weird with the background. There we go. So today we're going to be looking at jeggings that do not have a zipper. I think that if you are making a pant out of a stretchy denim, then that's what you've got, a stretch jean. A pant that you pull on, that is a jegging. We're also going to look at some ready-to-wear inspo and see how they are constructing their jeggings, see the details that they're adding. We'll take a look at their waistbands. We'll take a look at top stitching details that they have to help you pick and choose kind of what options you want to add to your jeggings. We'll, of course, look at suggested fabrics, notions that you'll need, jeggings patterns. I have scoured the internet and have found 6 indie jegging patterns that you guys can purchase and download. They all, to me, upon initial view, they kind of all look the same, but we'll dissect them as I'm known for doing on my YouTube channel for the differences so that you can find a pattern that will fit your needs, it will look most flattering on you, and all of that. We'll also look at seaming. So like I talked about a little bit earlier, we're going to be looking at flat felled seams because that is what is the most common in denim. For the inseam of the pant, we'll talk about the outseam of the pant and how to sew that. And then we'll also look at a faux flat fell as well, just because it's a million times easier. And then we'll look at top stitching. We'll practice top stitching. It can be a little bit finicky because we're going to be using fabrics that are a little bit more dense, that have a lot of stretch and spandex in them. So top stitching is one of those things that can be so finicky, and just changing one little thing makes all the difference. So I'll show you some examples of that as well. And then we'll talk about optional details that you have, and we'll practice inserting a zipper into the seam where the zipper teeth are exposed, so that you could add that as like an ankle detail if you wanted to do that. Your jeans will still be pull on, but they'll have a cute little ankle detail that you can zip or unzip. And then one thing that isn't mentioned here, but was brought up in the previous jeggings class that I taught, were some questions about pockets, back pockets specifically. So we'll talk a little bit about back pockets, what makes a back pocket more flattering, some ways to make sure that your pockets are the right size and the right shape and all of that. Okay, whoops. So jeggings, also known as pull-on pants, have no closures. Due to the high elasticity in the fabric and an elastic waistband, you're able to pull them on over your hips without zippers or buttons. Jeggings typically have a high rise and a deep waistband, making them super comfortable to wear. These examples that I'm showing here are all from ready-to-wear companies. The top company is Spanx, kind of like the industry leader in pull-on pants. And the other pair, the middle pair, is from Chico's. And then the bottom pair, I think it's just from some little boutique, but I wanted to put them in because jeggings do not mean skinny jeans. Jeggings can have a straight leg or a boot cut or even a flare. Jegging to me, really all it means is it pulls on, and what happens from the like low hip, I guess thigh down, is really up to you. I also want to point out that that ready-to-wear pair has belt loops also. So you can add a whole bunch of different details to your jeggings to make them look as much like regular pants as you want. Okay, so let's look at some ready-to-wear examples. I'm going to go over to my phone. Amina, are you going to be able to help me with that? I don't even see it down here anymore.
Yep, I can help.
Oh, I see it now. Okay, cool. So I need to quit the screen share, right?
Yes.
Do you guys see my, here, let's pin it. Okay, there we go. All right, so these are some ready-to-wear examples that I have found either over the years at Goodwill to help us kind of identify some of the things that the ready-to-wear companies are doing to make their jeggings themselves. So this is Spanx. These cost like sometimes more than $100. And what makes a spank is the compression quality. So you can see that these look like they would go on about a 14-year-old. And I do not have the body of a 14-year-old. But the fabric of these jeggings is so stretchy. And there it pings right back. You can see the recovery of the denim is so good. They really do have a quality fabric whenever it comes to Spanx. So this holds everything in, everything up, everything is like in its place on a Spanx. Some of the details are this super wide waistband. Here, I have a ruler here. Just shy of 2-inch waistband. And inside the waistband is an elastic that is the same width. So we have the elastic actually top stitched into the waistband here. And then these are just the seam allowances from the bottom of the pant, but the elastic is 2 inches as well. So it covers this entire waistband depth. They also added rivets, and we'll talk more about rivets toward the end of class today, but rivets are there because typically whenever you put your hands in your pockets, a lot of wear and tear happens on the edges of the pockets. What's funny about this is that these pockets don't work. These are not real pockets. So the rivets are completely useless as well, other than just a design feature. So that whenever you're looking at these, you can't really tell if they are real jeans or not. We've got the front fly, a faux front fly. This is literally not, well, you can't really see on these, but I'll show you some others. This is not an extra piece of fabric. This is just your center front seam and then some top stitching. And that's all it is. They've got bar tacking, and we'll practice that a little bit later. So they've got some bar tacking here and here. Again, bar tacking is used because typically when you open up your pants and there's a zipper here, there's a lot of strain and stress put on these 2 points of the zipper where the fabric is attached to the zipper, but this isn't a real zipper. They decided to add some distressing. Those are all really fun, neat details that you can do to your jeggings as well. On the back side, we've got a yoke. It's actually a very small yoke. It's not very pronounced, not my favorite yoke in the world, but we've got the yoke, we've got the top stitching details, and we actually have functioning pockets in the back. And I think that that's pretty consistent among all the examples that I have today is that there's no front pockets, but they do have back pockets. And we'll look at the size and shape of these pockets at the end of class, and we'll kind of analyze what makes a good back pocket or not. So that is a Spanx. The ankle, if you want to see, is left raw as well. Again, just another little detail. Then I have these, and these are from some place I think I've never heard of. Yeah, when you get stuff at Goodwill, you get these like really random brands. But these are really interesting because take a look at this waistband, right? This waistband is 3 inches deep, my kind of waistband. But what's interesting is inside the waistband is only, what is that, 3/4 inch elastic? Yeah, roughly 3/4 inch elastic, only sewn at the top and it's not top stitched through and through. It's only stitched like an understitch would be. So you've only got the elastic at the very, very top, and then you've got your seam allowances that you can see through here. This fabric is more, whereas this is like a denim with like a true denim with just a ton of spandex in it. This one is more of like a cotton sateen. So this is a cotton fabric with a whole bunch of spandex blended in. And you can see that it is much easier to stretch out. There's not as much resistance whenever I pull on this. So that makes it less compression. You know, it's not going to like suck everything in. It's not going to hold everything in place. It's just going to, you know, fit and wear like a regular pant would. Again, no front pockets here, but also very few details. This one doesn't have any rivets. Something that's really funny about this pair is it's got the top stitching, it's got the bar tacking just like the other pair, but it's actually like open here. There's no reason for that. I don't know. I guess because it creates like a shadow or something, and it even gives even more of an illusion of it being like a regular pant. But yeah, I thought that was really funny. I didn't even notice that until I started wearing them. Let's see. Oh, another detail, the Spanx have them too. I forgot to call it out, but they'll also have top stitching that goes down the side seam, but stops at your like mid to low hip. And then typically there is some top stitch, or I'm sorry, some bar tacking right here as well. Let me show you these. Yeah, you can see really well on this one. So they have top stitched this outer seam on the back side of the pant and added a little bit of bar tacking there. So that is another little fun detail. And then the back of these have functioning pockets. And again, no real hardware, no real details on the pocketing whatsoever, but you can see these are much bigger pockets, which I like personally. And then the hem of these is just a regular straight pant hem, nothing special to the hem at all. So that's this pair. And then this one I wanted to show you guys because even though it's not a jegging, you know, it has an actual zipper and button. I wanted to show you how this waistband is constructed. So this has your traditional waistband on the outside, but the elastic, this is the elastic. It is exposed on the inside. So you've got this, you know, 1.5 inch, I guess. What is that? Yeah, 1.5 inch waistband. You've got a 1.5 inch elastic. They are top stitched together. But the kicker here is that it also has a drawstring. How interesting is that, right? So between the waistband on the outer side and this elastic, they have inserted a drawstring. So if you are someone that either has like a belly that grows and goes back depending on your diet or depending on, you know, maybe a health issue that you have, maybe adding elastic to kind of get it close to where it needs to be, but then adding a reinforcement of the drawstring. So on your smaller days, you can tighten it up a little bit. That could be a really good option for you as well. All they've done to insert this elastic or this drawstring is to create a little buttonhole on the inner waistband. So it's a little buttonhole that you can make on your machine, and then they fed the drawstring through and through to the other side. So I thought that was a really, really neat detail. Something else this one has is something called a coin pocket. Well, it has a bunch of names, but most commonly known as a coin pocket. This one has functioning front pockets, which is really nice. And then the back side has a nice, pretty yoke, really big pockets in the back. It also has belt loops, and then a typical pant finish. All right. So that waistband obviously is super, super comfortable to wear because you can kind of adjust it. Even though elastic is somewhat forgiving as well, having that drawstring is really nice too. Okay, and I also pulled these out because they are a trouser, right? These look like dress pants, but because they are a pull-on, in my mind, that makes them a jegging. They don't look like a jean, so maybe it's more of a pegging. I don't know, a pant legging. I don't know. Why isn't anybody calling them peggings? But it has this really big waistband. This one is 2¼ inches, but it only has this little itty bitty amount of elastic in here. And the elastic is stitched on with a double stitch up here at the top. On the inside, everything is just finished on a serger and then top stitched, stitch in the ditch. You know, you guys, we can all do this. One thing that I did not mention, and I'm going to get the Spanx back out again, is some of these companies have decided to add these panels. So this one has this like power mesh panel, nylon, I'm assuming. It's completely raw. On this edge down here is not finished at all. And all it does is extend from side seam to side seam along the front of the pant. And this just adds a little bit of an extra layer, obviously, but also a tad bit of compression to this belly, to your belly section. It doesn't necessarily like hold it in like compression, but it definitely will aid in smoothing it out. But look at what Spanx is doing. Again, they are known for compression. They are known for like holding everything in. Nothing moves whenever you're wearing Spanx. And they have this panel that looks like this. Okay, so this is more of like a swimwear spandex. It is very, very stretchy. It is completely raw on the bottom edge. And you can see how it's separating from the pant. That's because this is smaller than the pant is. So when you wear these, this does act as an extra compression layer to hold everything nice and flat. In addition to the compression of the denim itself, we also have this. And all they've done, you guys, is stitched it into the side seam. And then they have, when you go to sew your top stitching down the center front, that is what this stitch is here. Up under here is like our faux pocket or our faux fly, and then they've just top stitched it down. So that is something really interesting. I actually applied that concept to the jeggings that I made, and we can look at these, and we will look at these in pretty good detail throughout class. But you can see for mine, I didn't make it all super pretty. But what I did finish the bottom edges, and I simply just kind of attached it and then did all my seaming on top of it so that, you know, I didn't have to worry about concealing too much. And no one ever sees this, obviously. But you can see it's a little bit smaller, and I just used like a knit lining fabric, basically, is what that is. So that is a really fun but useful and practical detail that you can add to your pants as well, mimicked by what we see in ready to wear. Okay, so does anyone have any like ready to wear pants or details that they really love and would include? Just open tregging. Tregging is really good, Whitney. Trouser, jegging, a tregging. Well, we're going to start something new. I'm already trying to get, what is it, pencil pant, because I don't support smoking. And so I don't understand why they call it cigarette pants, but they call it a pencil skirt. So I'm already trying to get pencil pant to be a thing. So now I'll get tregging to be a thing as well. So embroidery, I'm assuming you're talking about on the back pockets. The top stitching on the back pockets. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we do talk about top stitching, but it's totally personal preference. There are some ready-to-wear brands that put the same loop-de-loos on all their pants, whether they're jeggings, jeans, whatever it is. So if you wanted to have like a distinctive pocket for all your pants that you make, that would be really cute. And it's so easy to do. So easy. Yeah, the rivets are really good. I have seen, speaking of buttons, I have seen some companies who will extend that faux top stitching from the faux fly. They'll extend that up to through the waistband and then put in a fake button. Just put in a button head. And it doesn't actually function at all. So if you like that detail, if you're one that likes does a French tuck or something, you could definitely add that as a little detail as well. Okay, back to the screen share. All right, so let's look at some suggested fabrics. I've got 5 of them here. The first one, and probably the most common when it comes to jeggings, is something called Ponte di Roma. Ponte, without the di Roma, is a different fabric, but they're very similar. But all Pontes are double knit. They're all super stable. They all have a smooth hand and they don't wrinkle or crease. I think what makes the Ponte di Roma different is the blend that goes into that fabric. The rayon, some kind of synthetic like polyester, and spandex all blended together. And I think people love Ponte for jeggings because it's super easy to sew, super easy to wear, very easy to take care of, and still produces that really chic, smooth jegging that you're comfortable wearing. Next up, we have stretch corduroy. It's like traditional corduroy, but it just has some spandex blended in. You can get the wide wales, you can get the narrow wales. The thing about stretch corduroy is that it's gonna look like corduroy pants. So it's gonna give you that sort of rugged, that sort of, I don't know, quintessential like fall vibe. But it's gonna have that texture, it's gonna have that kind of stickiness to it. The Ponte di Roma, you could wear tunics over and it's so smooth that nothing sticks to anything. A stretch corduroy, things are still going to kind of stick to it a little bit. So you would really only want to wear regular tops with a stretch corduroy. Stretch twill. So denim is a twill weave. That is how denim is made. And so twill and denim are almost interchangeable. The only difference between twill and denim is the type of cotton that is woven to make the denim. So stretch twill, stretch denim, kind of the same deal. But both of them, because they have that diagonal weave, are known for strength and durability. So if you want something that's going to last and last and last, twill, stretch denim are going to be for you. Either way, they are typically 100% cotton with spandex blended in. The amount of spandex you have added in, the more compression, the more stretchy they will be. We also have stretch velvet here. That would make a very holiday, maybe holiday appropriate, maybe holiday in 5 years when we actually celebrate holidays again, but a very luxurious fabric. Obviously velvet has that sheen to it. It has the pile. It has everything that makes it so luxurious, and stretch velvet just has the spandex blended in. Again, kind of a sticky fabric, so you wouldn't really want to wear tunics over top or dresses. I think it would just cling to it. But if you wanted to make a really, really chic pair, I would make a pull-on pant with like a stovepipe or boot cut leg, and you will look like $1,000,000, and your pants are pull-on and have no closures and are super, super comfortable. Next up, we have sateen, kind of like the olive pair that I showed you. Typically a cotton blend. The weight of sateen can vary a lot. So there is a sateen that's like really lightweight and great for dresses, but they also have heavier weight sateens that would be really good for jeggings. Sateens are kind of known for having prints. So if you're looking for like some kind of printed fabric, you're most likely going to find that in a sateen. Much more over a Ponte is usually solids, corduroy is usually solid, velvet's usually solid. Twill, you might have some prints, some subtle kind of prints, but sateen is where you could have like your floral pant or your polka dot pant, or whatever it is that you wanted to have as in terms of a bottom weight print. Generally speaking, what you're looking for, like when I go to fabric.com and I start to search for fabric for jeggings, I am putting in the search box medium weight. I am putting in whatever stretch range they have there, but usually no less than 10 and no more than 25. Now, some of the pattern companies we're going to look at here next are going to go up to 30% stretch, but just know the more stretch there is, the looser they will feel. The less stretch is the more compression. So if you want them to fit like an athletic legging, go with 10% stretch. If you want them to feel like regular pants that have a little bit of comfort and ease to them, then go with the higher end, the 25%. But I would avoid anything lightweight, anything loosely woven, jersey, fleece, French terry, and anything that's labeled as like mostly spandex is going to be more like your athletic legging fabric. It's going to be your like super, super shiny, stretchy, athletic knit. Okay, so let's talk fabrics. Does anyone have any questions about fabrics? Do you have a fabric in your stash that you want to know about? Have you seen something, heard something, wondered about something?
What about scuba knit?
So yeah, and was that Deborah that asked? I saw in the chat the difference between Ponte and scuba. There is not that much of a difference in terms of how they look. They both have that smooth hand, that neither of them crease, but scuba is more of like a foam. That's really terrible metaphor, but it's whereas Ponte is a double knit, scuba is not. So scuba is almost like, I can't think of anything else other than like a foam, a thin foam layer with some kind of fabric over top. So in my mind, scuba has a lot less stretch. Scuba has a lot more structure, so it tends to move less. It's easier, it's more difficult to move in. Whereas scuba makes beautiful like circle skirts and things like that that need all of that structure. I think when you are sewing something that's so close fitting to the body, scuba can be a little bit difficult to wear. And Elizabeth has some snakeskin jacquard stretch bangling, which has lycra in it. She wants to know what I think of that. Well, based on what you told me, they sound fabulous, but I would need to know the stretch percentage if you still have that information. Lycra versus spandex, it's really two sides of a different coin, two sides of the same coin, whatever the saying is. They're just two different types of materials. I think it would be very difficult for the average home sewist to determine something that has lycra in it versus something that has spandex. They're both super stretchy.
The only difference is that lycra is the trademark name, sort of like Kleenex and Puffs.
There you go. Okay, so yeah, there's really no difference in them at all then if it's just a brand name. So that doesn't tell me much. The fact that it has lycra in it, it would be a matter of how much lycra is in it. Do you know, Elizabeth? You could also, they have rulers, some of them that you can download off the internet, yeah, and do a stretch test, exactly where I was going with that, Whitney, where you take like, I don't know, 4 inches and you stretch it out and then it'll tell you. The other really important thing to note about any fabric that you're like, if you're shopping from your stash or you're shopping somewhere where they don't have that information, is recovery. So you want it to stretch out that 10 to 25%, but you also want it to bounce back to where it came from. Otherwise, as you're wearing it throughout the day, guess what? They fall, they sag, and you're pulling them up all day long, and it's so annoying. No matter how much elastic you have in your waistband, they'll bag out, in like the butt area. Have you ever seen guys? It's more prevalent in guys denim than anywhere else I've ever seen. And it's so unattractive. And I feel like I'm the only one that notices it, but it bothers me so much. But guys, pants bag out a lot between it sounds like I'm like creeping on the guys' butts, but I'm not. I'm just noticing their pants, and it's just saggy. It looks like a wet diaper, and it's just so unattractive. So that's what we want to try to avoid as well whenever we are picking out fabrics. So recovery is super, super important. Any other fabric related questions? Okay. We are going to move on to looking at some patterns. And again, I really did go to the depths of the internet to try and find every single jegging pattern that I could find. So some of them are from companies that we all know. Some of them are from companies I have never heard of before, but I included them anyways, because ultimately it's up to you and you have the freedom to decide whatever you want your jeggings to look like. So our very first one is the Itch to Stitch Mountain View pull-on pant. Now, this is the pattern that I made. This is the example that I showed you earlier, except when I was doing my fitting issues, I played around with the rise, not factoring in the waistband, like a beginner would. So my waistband is a little bit narrower, but I do love the super deep waistband she has on hers. Looking at the front, you can see she has the riveting. She has the top stitching detail on the pocket, along the center front, the inseam, and that little bit on the outseam as well with another rivet. So very, very close to regular looking denim on these pants. On the back, she has a yoke. She has your back pockets with the top stitching, but she also has a seam that runs down the center of your leg. And at first I was like, oh, that's just so untraditional. It's so unlike jeans. But the more that I thought about it, I am someone who has like I could give you like a list of all the different nuances of my legs. And in the back, I happen to have thin back thighs and prominent back calves. So to find a pant that is fitted enough in the thigh, but loose enough in the calf is virtually impossible. So I just figured that if I had that extra seam back there, I would be able to use that, plus the side seams to kind of nip and tuck here and there and get a really, really beautiful fit in the back, which I genuinely feel like I was able to achieve. So if you've got someone, or if you are someone who has a lot of those variances in your leg, especially in the back, if you've got a pear shape, or even if you have a very flat bottom too, this would help you kind of achieve that by pulling in and letting out in different areas. What are some other things? Tummy control waistband, straight cut legs. And then she provides instructions on making slim legs. And we're going to look at this in a lot of detail later, adjusting the shape of your leg. It's not as easy as just taking into the side seam or letting it out. But yeah, she mentions the ease of shaping the back leg. Her fabric requirements or suggestions are stretch denim or twill or corduroy fabric. And she recommends 20 to 30% stretch. So a little bit higher than what I like, but if you like to follow exactly what the pattern designer recommends for their own patterns, you could go up to 30% stretch on hers. She says, do not use fabric with less stretch. And that's just a matter of your sizing would be a little bit different. If you're using a super, super compression fabric, you're probably going to have to size up. That's just the way that it is. So you just need a little bit more ease, and the ease that she has built into hers would not accommodate a 10% stretch fabric is all she's really saying there. It's not that you can't, you would just have to do a little bit more work to figuring out what size you would need. She also has a lining in there, and that is for her pocket bags. because the front pockets are functioning. You can actually use them. And then top stitching thread and just a few other notions there. Let me get this to move so I can see that. Hold on. Not going to move. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, the 1/2 inch wide elastic. So even though she has a super deep waistband, she's only got 1/2 inch elastic in there. Now that is something that you can follow her rules on, or you can say, you know what, no, I want that whole waistband to have elastic in it, and you could put in the deep elastic that you wanted to as well. In mine that I made of hers, I did use the 1/2 inch elastic. I haven't noticed anything one way or another about it being uncomfortable. It still is easy to wear, and I don't pay attention to the waistband at all. So, and then the optional rivets, like we can see, I did not put the rivets on mine, probably because I didn't have them. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, next up is the J. Lee Eleanor pull-on pants. Now, hopefully already you can kind of see a difference between the J. Lee and the Itch to Stitch that we just looked at, mostly in the depth of that waistband. So much narrower waistband, a lot less top stitching. I don't see any on the center front. I don't see any on the inseams or on the outseam. That could also just be because she hasn't drawn it into her illustration. Easy enough for us to add, but the intention, I guess, of the designer is to not have it. She does have a really beautiful yoke. I love the yoke in the back. She's got a cropped version and a full length version. And she describes it as fitted through the waist and hips, straight from the knee down. And then again, she says, very easy to turn into skinny jeans. I would be a little bit leery if her instructions tell you to just trim off a couple of inches. We'll look at the right way to do it later. Definitely more steps, but worth it. And then she's recommending for her fabric, denim or twill with 20% stretch across the grain. Again, still within that 10 to 25% range. She's just being a lot more specific with hers. If your fabric has 25% stretch, you might consider sizing down or making larger seam allowances. If your fabric has less stretch, you might consider sizing up. Functional pocket add-on available. That just means that with the regular pattern, the pockets are top stitch closed, just like the ready-to-wear versions I showed you, and you can't use them. But if you want to have functional front pockets, you can get a little add-on pack, and she'll send you with like the pocket bag and all of that. So top stitching thread, 1 inch wide elastic on this one. So nice, deep elastic. To me, the rise on these also look a little bit lower, but if you want a real low rise one, head on over to Stitch Upon a Time Goldie Legs. I mean, that is a low front rise. Am I right? So still a pull-on pant, and she's got her like 2 views in one illustration. So she's got a skinny leg and a flare. I'm assuming these are 2 separate pattern pieces, which is 1,000 times better than just trimming off from the side seam or what. I don't know what J. Lee's instructions are, but this is a good option to have 2 separate leg. Essentially, when we get to that part of the class today, you'll see that it's basically redrafting your pant legs anyways. So to have 2 options right out of the gate, like Stitch Upon a Time offers, is a lot of value. It is really good value. She's also got, you know, just the regular scoop pockets, an average size width waistband, top stitching detail along the center front, and then you have the option of a welt pocket or a patch pocket, and there is no yoke on these. So these to me are going to be a little bit more like a tregging. If you're new here, that is a trouser and a jegging combined. Whitney, I will give you all the credit for that one. But you've got a pretty deep rise in the back, but it does scoop down in the front, it appears. Now, could that just be her illustration being very exaggerated? Yes. But I imagine these are a pretty low rise jegging. Then she gives options for boot cut, skinny leg, which we can see those here, front pockets. So you can have the functioning front pocket if you want, or have a faux front pocket. You've got regular patch pockets in the back or welt pockets, and then a faux fly, and then 2 options for waistbands, a yoga waistband and a maternity waistband. She suggests something called jegging knit, which I've never even heard of before. I would be very interested to know, like, if she's actually purchased something called jegging knit. But jegging knit or stretch denim fabric with at least 25% stretch. So she's on the high end of the stretch spectrum. And then 3/4 inch wide elastic in her waistband, which again, you can do your own thing for. All right, next up we have the Style Art Blakely's. Look at this high rise, right? Super, super high rise. This, I imagine this seam here is going to hit at your natural waist, and this is going to be above your natural waist. That would be my assessment by looking at this illustration. But she's got the little coin pocket in there, which we haven't really seen from others yet. The top stitching on the pocket, top stitching on the front, the center front, but that's it. No rivets, no top stitching here, no top stitching on the inseam, no belt loops, which we haven't really seen much of anyways. But on the back, she's got a really great yoke. And then here is some of that top stitching embroidery detail that you asked about. I presume that she provides you with a template for this, where you can add this on your own. Very easy to make your own, but it's also kind of fun whenever someone just does all the work for you. So she describes it as a slim leg, pull-on jean, features a wide waistband with inserted elastic. The elastic is 1.5 inches deep on this one. The faux pockets feature a horizontal design line, which is top stitched with a twin needle. The faux fly also has a twin needle top stitch. She's recommending stretch denim or any stretch woven with 3% lycra. Now, 3% lycra is not the same as 3% stretch. 3% lycra is just the amount of lycra in your pant. The stretch quality of a 3% lycra fabric can still vary. Okay, so it's important that when you're shopping for your pant, if you find a 3% lycra pant and you're like, ooh, this is good, to still make sure that the stretch percentage falls within that range. It's a little bit misleading how she has just that 3% lycra as the standard for fabric. She really should have a stretch percentage in there. But hopefully now you guys are armed with that information, so you won't make that mistake. But 3% lycra, depending on the base fabric, can mean a myriad of different stretch percentages. Okay, so next we have the MC2 pull-on stretchy jeans pants. Not my name, she named it. I'd never heard of MC2 before. Have any of you guys? I would love to know. She is kind of like Berta Style in that the instructions do not have illustrations. They are just listed out. I would expect that in order to pull off making these, you would need to have a pretty deep understanding of pants making, pants sewing before, whereas the other companies might hold your hand a little bit more. She does not. She does not even include seam allowances. So very much like a Berta pattern. But although she doesn't give a lot of information in her description, all she says is pull on stretchy pants with flattering elasticated waistband. You can see some of the details here that we have been talking about. So we've got the deep waistband with top stitching, faux fly. We've got some pocket top stitching. We've got a back yoke and back pockets. Pretty standard across the board now that we've seen so many different patterns. But she's only, like, her only information she's giving you about fabrics are a mid-weight stretchy woven fabric. And as you guys know by now, mid-weight is great, but stretchy woven can vary. So I think you really need to pay attention to stretch percentage on this one. And then she also requires top stitching thread, obviously. Oh, whoop, 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 whoop. Whoa, whoa, too sensitive. All right. The last two that we have here, and I wanted to put these in. These are the Love Notions Sabrina Slims. And I wanted to put these in because they don't really look like jeans. They're more of the tregging that we've been talking about. They say that they are styled after like an Audrey Hepburn type of pencil pant. And you can tell the main difference really is that super thin waistband and the omission of front pockets on this middle view. This is a front view. Side view, front, back. So the omission of the pockets, omission of the fly top stitching on both versions, omission of top stitching really everywhere except for on these center front leg seams and center back leg seams. And just like we talked about with the itch to stitch version, this allows you to do a lot of leg shaping. You don't have just the side seams to contend with. You now also have these seam allowances, as well, where you can add width or take it away depending on your body shape. I have a athletic thigh in the front, but a thin thigh in the back. I know, so complicated. So to be able to let out the thigh area a little bit within this seam allowance is really helpful to get a beautiful, beautiful shape. She's also got the option for a welt pocket or a patch pocket. And then they always, Love Notions never forgets about the hems. They always have cute details on their hems, especially with their pants. So this one happens to have this little notch detail here. So slim fit, pull on style. There's a solid front and back or a seamed front and back, 3 hem styles. The zippered style is included in their instructions. I'm going to show you how to do it today, but you can also do it with theirs. I think that their zipper might be concealed where our zipper teeth are going to be visible, but you also have the split hem. You also have front pockets that act as a control panel. So just like I was showing you about the pants that I made, the Spanx version, and those other trousers that we looked at, it's going to have the pocket bag of these pants is going to be extended to the center front seam, adding in another layer of, what does she recommend? A lightweight woven for the lining, another layer just to kind of hold everything in place. And then there's also a maternity option, and she has a fitting workbook if you're into that kind of help. But she recommends stable, medium to heavyweight knits such as Ponte, Scuba, French Terry, Interlock, and Cotton Lycra. And as we mentioned before, these 3, Scuba, French Terry, Interlock, I'm not 100% convinced on those. I cannot imagine a medium weight French Terry pant. In my mind, I just can't process that. I don't see how that would work. Same thing with the Scuba, maybe with these pants, because they're only a slim fit, like they're not super fitted. They have a little bit of extra wearing ease in them. Maybe the Scuba would work a little bit better, especially if it's a lighter weight Scuba. But a heavy weight Scuba, like if I'm new to sewing and I'm reading this, I'm saying, oh, heavyweight Scuba, heavyweight Interlock, you know what I mean? And so I don't know, that to me is a little bit, that's a recipe for a lot of questions at the very least on their end. But she does go on to say medium weight wovens with at least 20% stretch. So this whole area here, the second sentence, I'm all for that as a fabric suggestion. Sateen, corduroy, twill, jacquard, and denim with 20% stretch. Great. And then for the, she says for the welt pocket bag is lightweight woven. So for the front pocket bag that adds the control panel, I'm thinking she's doing that out of self fabric, which again, I'm not entirely sure about that because it seems like it would add a lot of bulk. So I would just grab a scrap of, knit lining fabric, some kind of swimwear fabric, something like that. And that's what I would use for the control panel on these. But 2-inch wide knit elastic in this waistband. Actually, now that I'm thinking, now that I'm like actually paying attention, the 2-inch wide elastic is the widest elastic we've seen of everyone's. So even though the waistband is probably 2 inches, she's got the whole thing filled up with elastic, whereas the other folks have like a 4-inch waistband and only half an inch of elastic. Okay, and then the zipper that you need for the ankle. All right, so last up we have the Layla Jane Scarlet Jeans. This pattern is interesting because you get the option of a functioning jean with a functioning zipper and fly, and you also get the jegging option. So if you're someone that likes to wear both jeans and jeggings, you can get it all in one pattern. She's got the medium rise version A, which is this here. She's got a high rise here. And then she's got the medium rise with a knit waistband. And it's important to note that this waistband is going to be out of a different fabric than the rest of your pants. So think a lot like maternity pants, but without that, you know, expansive panel that gets over the belly. So I've never had children, I've never been pregnant, but I always am envious of the maternity pants because I feel like during certain times of the month or maybe around Thanksgiving, oh, that would be so comfortable. You know, just pull that panel up. So this would give you a sort of one of those types of pull-on pants. She's also got this really interesting like moto detail that you can add to your pull-on pants if you want them to be a little bit more edgy. And then this is the high rise back. So this goes with this pair here. She doesn't show the medium rise back, but I'm assuming they look the same. Hers have belt loops, back yoke, back pockets, but again, very little top stitching. I mean, I don't even see any around the pockets, maybe just a little bit. She does have the faux fly though. And then we've got a couple different leg options here as well. So high or medium rise waist options, faux zip fly with knit waistband or functional zip fly options, skinny boot cut or moto front skinny jean views. Skinny boot cut or moto. Yeah, that's worded pretty funny. Tips on how to get a professional finish on the jeans, clearly written instructions, yada, 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 ebook. Okay. We've also got woven medium weight, bottom weight fabrics with stretch, such as stretch denim, stretch twill, stretch sateen. Fabric should have between 15 and 25% stretch. So she's pretty on board with my calculations on what stretch should have as well. Her pocket lining, she recommends batiste, muslin, or quilting cotton. And for the knit waistband, she is suggesting the Pontes, the Scubas, the athletic knits, and nylon poly, anything with up to 50% stretch on that waistband. So this pair is very intriguing to me simply because on those days where I'm not tucking in a shirt to save my life anyways, might as well have a stretchy, comfy waistband on top of that. And also it's very interesting that the bottom of the pant is made for the woven fabrics and only the waistband is made for the knits. So obviously those are a little bit interchangeable. Yes, you could make an entire pant out of Ponte, including the waistband, but it's interesting to me how she's kind of approaching it with a woven and a knit combo. And then what's more interesting is she's recommending 3/8 inch clear elastic for that knit waistband. So not even knit elastic. You know, clear elastic is pretty thin. It's kind of like, I don't know, not very elasticy. I know that much. So that's interesting to see. I'm guessing a lot of that compression and what holds it up is using these fabrics here. And I think that the waistband is drafted with a lot of negative ease. And so that's what's holding your pant up. I think the elastic, this clear elastic here, is really only serving to not have the pants stretch out, not have the waistband stretch out. Kind of like when you put it into a shoulder seam of a knit garment, kind of like that. And with that, that is my extended review and discussion on patterns. Any questions about any of those that I shared, or a pattern that you've heard of that I didn't mention already, or pattern hacking, any pattern questions that you have? And I'm going to read through the the chat here as well while questions are coming in. Yes, Debbie, I mentioned that earlier. Sorry. The slides will be made available to you. I'll have them out tonight. They're going to come from me. A recording of this will go out from Expo, and I think they're quoting like a week or two on getting those out to everybody. Oh, thanks, Grace. Okay. Is that a contoured waistband? Do you remember which one you were asking about, Whitney? Sorry.
Yeah, it was the, there were two, let me see, I think it was the Eleanor and the Goldilocks. They both sort of, because the front went down, it almost looked like the waistband was contoured.
Right. And I do think, can you guys see me? Oh, let's, how do we get that? Amina, can we get it so they can see me and not my phone? It looks like there's pins in both of them. Maybe that's why. There we go. Now you can see me, right? Can you see me? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so the thing about contoured waistbands as it applies to all pants, the lower the rise, the more contour that you need because your body is more curvy the closer you get to your hip line. If you have a pant that is a high rise, there's really not a need for a contoured waistband because your waist is pretty much just your waist. There isn't a lot of curvature there. That said, if you do have a body type that has a lot of curving going on at the waist and you want to make a high waist pant, you could look at a curved waistband. But in my opinion, high-waisted is a straight waistband, low-waisted, even medium rise would be a slight curve. But this sort of idea that you need a curved waistband on all pants if you're a pear shape is it doesn't make sense because your body isn't that curved. Like if I'm a pear, I'm very curvy at the hip and not that curvy at the waist. So a straight waistband is ideal. And that's when you have a curved waistband up at your waist, that's when you get that really big thing in the back that is always like gaping open. Ideally, our fabric and the negative ease in the pattern will help with that. But if you have a straight waistband, it should fit evenly around your waist and not need a ton of contour. But as you go down, yes. So maybe those two patterns were a little bit lower rise, and that's why they looked like it had a big curved waistband. Okay. And then are the pocket bags usually woven instead of ponte? Elizabeth is asking. So the pocket bags are whatever you want them to be. I think pattern designers do tell you to use a woven simply because when you put anything in them, your hands or phone or toys or whatever it is, you want that pocket bag to be like able to hold things. You don't want it to be saggy and droopy. So I think that's why they recommend woven fabrics. That said though, on mine, I'll make sure, I don't want to lie to you guys. Yeah, on mine, I just use this like knit fabric for the pocket bag and I don't ever notice anything like weird about it. But I knew that I wanted the panel, and I knew the panel could not be woven, otherwise they wouldn't stretch across at all. So if you're just doing like a regular pocket bag, let's see, which one of these had actual working pockets? These ones did. Theirs is a woven. So they've got a cotton woven. They actually did French seams. Who knew? Okay. My Goodwill pants. Oh, these are Uniqlo. It's not, that's so odd to me. Uniqlo is like known for being kind of inexpensive. It's like a Forever 21 kind of. Maybe it's not that cheap, but anyways, French seams on an inside pocket blew me away. But yeah, so they have woven on theirs, but their pocket bags are only so big and they're loose from the pant. So it doesn't impact the snugness of the pant on your body. Whitney's asking, will we be talking about how to hacks later? I want flares or boot cut, but I've already bought the Itch to Stitch Mountain View. Okay, yes, we will talk about how to adjust the pant opening. I'm not going to be showing you how, but I have a really, really great resource that talks you through it step by step with illustrations. Maybe it's something I can get on my channel in the next few months, but it's not something I have available to you guys yet. Okay, any other questions? We're about an hour in. Oh, hack to shorts or capris. More power to you if you want a jegging short. Because we're making these out of like a super stretchy fabric, I don't know that that would make a lot of sense. Personally, I would much rather have a looser fitting around my thigh. These would all be they would be like biker shorts that look like jeans, which nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're looking for, that's what this would be. So it would genuinely just be a matter of hacking off the length of the leg. If you wanted to make them shorter and wider to give you like less of a tight fitting short, I mean, you can do that. Sometimes it's more trouble than what it's worth. And you might be better off just going and buying a woven short pattern and then using a stretch woven fabric on them and possibly sizing down to get a little bit closer of a fit. I think the work you'd have to do on a jegging pattern to get them to be shorts with a wider opening, I just think it would be too much trouble for what it's worth to not actually end up with maybe something that you even like. You know what I mean? So I would just start with a different base and then adjust the fabric to get the kind of comfort that you're looking for. But on those short patterns that all have the I think now I'm getting what you're saying, and it's not a terrible idea, but on all those short patterns that have the zip front fly and you're wanting to just pull them on, maybe then if I were going to do that, I would take my jegging pattern to the hip line and combine it with a short pattern. I just don't know about altering it, pants around the crotch, all those they are all so particular, and you make like a 1/4 of an inch adjustment and it throws everything off. So I would just feel more comfortable myself going with a pattern that was made for a short and then adding the stretchy waistband to it. You can obviously, all of those short patterns that have zip flies, you can convert them to faux flies. That's not the challenge. The challenge is redrafting your waistband to get it to have negative ease so that it is held up on its own. Another option might be to do the elastic with the waistband that is provided by the shorts pattern and then adding that drawstring. That's not a terrible idea. Any of those jumping out as options, Elizabeth? I know that's probably not not entirely the answer you were hoping for. It's just, pants are so tricky from like the hip down even.
She might want to start with a yoga pant.
Say that again?
She might want to start with a yoga pant.
Yeah. Start with something pull on already, and then from the hip down, kind of combine your shorts with the pull on. You know what I mean? But I see where you're going with this. And again, it's one of those things that I don't see a lot of people doing and ready to wear, and they should. We need another name, Whitney. We need a jegging short, a shegging. No, it would be that jort's already been done, and that's not what it is. Anyways, you guys know what I'm getting at. That's a fun idea, Elizabeth. I'm going to mull over that a lot, I think. Okay, so we're a little over an hour into class. I need to get a sip of water. Anybody need to run to the restroom really quickly? We'll take like a 2-minute break and come back at 10 after the hour. Okay. I'm going. Okay. Okay, we are going to get started again. Going back to the presentation. Okay. So now we're going to start practicing some sewing. I have a flat felled seam tutorial here. The presentation that you get emailed will have obviously these little step outs with photos, but I'm going to demonstrate it for you guys now, and you guys can sew along with me. So Amina, we're going to the overhead shot. If you can help me get us over there.
We've got it pinned, so it should be visible to all participants right now.
Is it big on the screen though?
Let me unpin.
It was when you asked to go to overhead. Before then, it was on the screen.
Okay. Should I remove the pin of me and then add the pin?
So I've done that, so it should just be the overhead for everyone.
Okay, there we go. All right, so you guys have some fabric scraps. I'm going to lower this so it's going to get a little bit bumpy. Sorry. I just want to make sure you guys can see up close. Okay, you guys can see that pretty good, right? All right, so we're going to practice some flat felled seams, and I'm going to use this fabric simply because it has a distinctive right side and wrong side, or maybe I should do one of these. Here, I'll do one of this and one of this so that you guys can see the front and the back really easily of both of them. I don't know how my machine is going to necessarily like this, but we're going to go with it. Okay, so for a flat felled seam, yes, there are about, I don't know, I can think of like 4 different ways to do a flat felled seam. Yeah, I can be, can you see what I'm doing overhead? Can you see my hand? No. Oh, okay. I mean, they're telling me that they cannot see. Did it fix it? Okay, everybody's good now. Okay, good. Okay, so there are a lot of different ways to do a flat felled seam. You could even, if you're using like a thinner ponte, like, or something, I would say, yeah, well, I mean, I'm trying to say you could do a French seam and then tack down the little flap that ends up, you know, results from a French seam. But a true flat felled seam is sewn the following way. You are going to start by sewing your fabrics wrong sides together at your pattern's seam allowance. So I've seen some 5/8, I've seen some 1/2 inch, some 3/8 of an inch. It really just depends, but you're gonna, obviously sew your, and again, this would just be at the inseam of your pant. Is really the only place where flat felled seams are sewn in any pant. If you want to look at these Spanx ones, you can see they did a faux flat felled seam here, and then here they have seam pressed open with serged edges. This is the out seam, and this is the inseam. So the only place you're really doing this is the inseam. So we're here on my machine. I've got my EloFlex thread in the machine, and EloFlex, I saved the top of it for you. EloFlex is spelled like this. You can find it at Joann, made by Cox and Clark. I think that Metler has their own version of stretch thread as well, but you can see that it is truly a stretch thread. If you were able to go out and buy some of this and you're using it for the first time today, I imagine you're a lot like I was, a little bit mind blown over how this stuff works. I thought it was just super, super cool and have loved using it for projects like this. Now, I'll say that I do not use EloFlex on all of my knit garments. I don't use it on jersey or anything like that. I still use polyester thread, but on anything with like a scuba, a ponte, any of these stretch wovens, something that needs a little bit of durability, I will absolutely grab the stretch thread. All right, so we're at wrong sides together. The beauty about stretch thread is that you do not have to sew your seams with a zigzag stitch. Because the thread stretches, that's going to give you the stretch that you need within your seam. So I just got my machine set at a regular stitch length, and I've got it at my seam allowance. And we are just going to sew a straight stitch, wrong sides together. All right, I hear you guys chatting. I'm coming over there now. Let me see what these questions are. Yes, EloFlex goes in the bobbin thread as well. And yes, thank you. Those are both great questions, Debbie. You use your machine to load your bobbin, but do it at the lowest setting your machine has, so it's not feeding it through super, super, super fast and pulling on it. Basically, you want to thread your bobbin on a slow speed so that it can kind of just do its own thing and nothing's pulling on it too much. You do not have to wind it by hand like you do with regular elastic thread, or for shirring, you don't have to do that. And then my other note about EloFlex is that EloFlex loves a stretch needle over a ballpoint needle. A stretch needle has like a little groove in it, and the EloFlex fits into that groove, and the groove helps guide the thread into the fabric. And you can see here kind of the results that I got from my stretch thread. And you can see the seam still completely stretches out. That was the wrong side, I think. And this was the top thread. So it's really, really beautiful. I hope that you guys all get great results from yours using it as well. Anybody have any questions as they're getting it through their machine for the first time? All right. So the next step for flat felled seam is to trim back your seam allowance. Oh, question. Straight stitch. Straight stitch. Like this. All right, so we are going to trim back one of our seam allowances. And if this were the inseam of my pant, I would want to make sure that we were trimming the back, not the front, because we want these seams to get top stitched to the back of our pant. Lord, that's hard to describe. So this would be the back pattern piece, and this would be the front pattern piece. And so we are going to trim the back pattern pieces seam allowance. Does that make sense? And you trim it back to like 1/8 of an inch. I'm not going to be too precise here in class. I apologize, but that's pretty close actually. Ponte is just so easy to work with. Am I right? All right, so you have this little number here, right? We've got our back seam allowance trimmed back to 1/8 of an inch. Our next step would be to take the seam allowance that you have, the full seam allowance on the front, and fold it over till the seam allowances, the cut edges, sorry, to where the cut edges will match up. And this is where a lot of people are like, never mind, I don't want to do a flat filled seam anymore. This is way too finicky for me, especially because on fabrics like Ponte or anything with a lot of spandex in it, they just don't press that well. You have to use a pressing cloth, and this whole idea is just so finicky to do. But that would be the idea. And then once you have that, fold it over, then you would bring it around to the back of your garment like this. And then we would be top stitching. We would be top stitching that. Does that make sense to everyone? How that works? How you encase the raw edges like this? All right, let me go to a machine and try and get this, not my machine, my ironing board, and get this pressed as best as I can so I can show you the top stitching. Yeah, it's just not pressing at all. This one that I'm using here, you can tell it's not pressing at all. So we're going to go to my machine and I'm going to talk you guys through some top stitching. Okay, so we would be switching from our Elo Flex thread to our top stitching thread on the top. You're leaving Elo Flex in the bobbin. Hold on. Tips for getting the, yeah, we're doing that right now. Grace, we're working on that right now. Okay, so you've got your top stitching thread in the top. And you need to change out your needle from your stretch needle to your top stitching needle. And this is where we start to kind of play around with different needles and even different brands of thread. I'm going to show you guys here in a second what, oh Lord. It's stuck. Oh gosh. The funniest things happen to you whenever you're teaching live. I think I broke it. Oh, geez. Okay, we won't be using the automatic threader, that's for sure. I wonder if this must not be my top stitching needle. Hold on. Where's the one? Because I've used that threader 1,000 times on top stitching thread. top stitch is the aqua top. I just had it out. Aqua top. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, you guys. I can't find it anywhere. Where's it down here? Well, I don't have a top stitching needle, so let's try a jeans needle and see how that pairs. You guys try using a top stitching needle first, because that is intended for top stitching, obviously. This jeans needle might be okay. What happened? The bobbin didn't like it? It had bad tension, or what was going on with it? And then my next question would be, did you use a stretch needle, size 75? Top stitching needles do not come in stretch, no. Is there a risk of cutting the knit with a regular point? I'm trying to think of how pointy top stitching needles are. I mean, obviously they're not a ball point. So yes. The answer is yes. There is a risk of cutting the knit with a regular point, but you can try, and this again is where trial and error is going to come in play here, because obviously some machines like things differently than others. But you can try a large ballpoint needle or a large stretch needle. Stretch only comes in 2 sizes though. But you could try a 90 on that. But yeah, and the other thing to point out is when you're top stitching, you're not necessarily sewing something, like you're not sewing a seam. So if the knit fibers are cut, by the tip of the needle, it's not as imperative as it would be if it were a regular seam. Does that make sense? Okay, so we've got this for our machine setup. We're going to switch from your regular foot over to an edge stitching foot. And this is how you're going to get the really accurate seam. So an edge stitching foot looks like this. It's got this little, I don't know, groovy thing, not even a groove. It's like an actual protrusion that sticks out. And you put that in the ditch of the seam line. And that's what helps you get a really accurate first pass on your garment. So, and again, I don't know how much my machine is going to like this top fabric that I have. It's pretty sticky. We're going to try it anyway. So it goes this way. So you put your fabric in with the front of your pant. Remember, this is the front of my pant. On the right side, you place the little groovy thing of the edge stitching needle right along the seam line. Got all this, in theory, pressed down pretty well. And then you drop your needle and you just stitch along this, keeping that guide right there on your seam line the whole way through. And I also like to ping up my stitch length a little bit. I like a 4.0 on top stitching, but it's kind of personal preference. I mean, it's not loving it. Yeah, I'm definitely like forcing this through, but you guys can see how I'm just keeping that groove of the foot right in line with the seam all the way down. No back stitching for the top or bottom of your top stitching. So our first pass looks like this. And obviously you guys are using matching thread, and so it doesn't look this crazy. But that's your first pass. Okay, good. Yeah, EloFlex loves the 75 stretch needle. That groove in the stretch needle, the EloFlex sits right inside it, and the needle is able to help guide it in and out of the fabric. It really, really makes a big difference. Okay, so that's the first pass. And you can tell we got like just 1/8 of an inch past our seam line. Our next pass, we're going to swap out our edge stitching foot for our 1/4 inch foot, or maybe you have a quilting foot, or anything that helps you measure out a 1/4 inch seam. So mine has this little groove here, this little, like, I don't know, this little indentation. Can you see the indentation? Yeah, you can see that a little better. And so if I place this at the seam that we just sewed, and then put the needle through the little hole, this gives me an exact 1/4 inch seam width. Yes, Margaret. Yes, you can use your cover stitch machine for sure. It would just, you know how the bottom of the cover stitch has all those threads? That is unnecessary because it's a closed edge. The raw edge doesn't need to be finished. So you might have a little bit of extra bulk. But I think that when we go to do the faux flat felled seam here next, I think the cover stitch would be a beautiful option for that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that point. Okay, so we've got our 1/4 inch foot in place. And like I said, I am placing the little edge of that foot right down with the edge of the first top stitching stitch that I just made. And then we are putting our needle down into that little groove. Remember to ping up your stitch length. And this is going to help us get an exact, or as exact as possible. It doesn't, I mean, perfection is one of those things, right? Through and through on every single top stitching seam. Now my seam allowances were a little bit wonky, but you can see how even those can be. And you can tell on the back too that my tension's not terrible, but my machine definitely likes the 1/4 inch foot a lot more than it likes the edge stitch foot. So that is something I'd have to play around with in terms of tension, but that's how it looks on the inside for mine. Also, using these 2 different fabrics probably isn't the best idea. Okay, so let me take questions from you guys about the traditional method of top stitching, or I'm sorry, of flat felt seams. Any specific questions about that? Okay, so that's what we've got there on that guy. Now we can talk about faux flat felled seams. So faux flat felled seams are simply a matter of sewing and finishing off your seam allowances and then adding top stitching to those seam allowances. So we've got our fabric right sides together. We are going to stitch this at our seam allowance, and then we are going to finish the raw edges together. And Margaret, this is where you would skip that finishing. You would sew your seam at your seam allowance and then go straight to your cover stitch machine, and you wouldn't have to finish the raw edges. Okay, but for those of us that don't have a cover stitch, well, I do have one, but those of us that aren't using our cover stitch, we're going to go back to our machine. And we're going to load it back up with the EloFlex again. Don't forget to change your needle back to the stretch needle. I swear I just dropped that top stitching needle into the garbage. That jeans needle. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. Never a dull moment around here. Stretch. Okay. We got our stretch needle here. Take this out. We're going to go back to our regular straight stitch. Let me thread this guy. And then put on your regular presser foot. And we are going to do a straight stitch. We're doing right sides together this time. All right, so we've got right sides together. And then if the denim colored fabric were the back of my pant, then we would press all of our seam allowances toward the back of our pant. And then we would do the same top stitching method that we just did for the regular flat felled seam. You would finish these off, you would serge these or overlock these, however you want to finish your seam allowances. That said, also, Ponte and things like that do never fray, so you could just leave them totally raw if you wanted. But you switch back to your top stitching thread. So I can show you guys the order of operations for that one more time. Switch your needle back. Needle is blue on top. Oh, here it is. I don't hear any questions coming over so far, so I'm assuming you guys are faring pretty decent. Lord have mercy. I might have to do polyester thread and pretend that it's top stitching thread. It won't go in. I have some of those little threader doodads, but none of them handy. So let's just, for the sake of keeping class rolling right along here, let me just pretend that I'm using top stitching thread when really I'm using polyester thread. Okay, so again, you will use a edge stitch foot first. Let me go get that question, hold on. How do you do all the top stitching on thinner lower leg? So the top stitching is only on the inseam, and you would just sew the inseam first, so flat, before you sewed the outseam. You would sew the outseam like second. Does that make sense? You sew the inseam first, so you would basically be sewing this flat, and then you sew the outseam. And even that with like a thin ankle, a narrow ankle, sewing that outseam is still a little bit tricky. You're like feeding it in and you've only got like this much space, but it can be done. Okay, so we've got our edge stitch foot on. We've got the groove of the edge stitch foot in the ditch of the seam we just sewed, dropping down our needle, hanging up our stitch length. Like so. And obviously my machine does not like that at all because the tension on the bobbin is all crazy. But I'm also using 2 different fabrics, 2 different threads. There's a lot going on here. But okay, then switch out, switch out your edge stitch foot for your 1/4 inch or quilting foot, and then line up the outer edge of that foot, hang your needle over, raise your stitch length, drop it down, and stitch right along the stitching line you just made. All right, and there you have really pretty even stitches. Any questions about the top stitching? The underside of a faux flat felled seam, so you would have this would either be serged, or if you use the cover stitch like we talked about, if you had them raw, you could even trim back these seam allowances really, really close to your last row of top stitching, and that would reduce even more bulk in the seam. Obviously, it would be a little bit straighter than that, but you guys get the idea. From the right side, this would be the front of my pant, and this would be the back of my pant.
On the faux flat fell, do you do any trimming before you do the top stitching?
So if you were to run this through your serger to finish off these seam lines, these raw edges, you wouldn't have that much to trim away. If you didn't run it through your serger or finish off the seams in any way, then yes, I would trim them back like I've done here. These ready-to-wear jeans, these are the Spanx. And you can see that their top stitching thread is the gold thread. And the gold thread is running right inside the serging. So they have a good 1/4 inch seam allowance still hanging outside of the top stitching. Whenever I did mine, I did not, well, I don't know what I did because look, let me make sure. Yeah. So I only did 1 row of top stitching on the inseam, first of all. Secondly, it looks like I did it looks like I sewed the seam, then ran it through my serger, trimming away a bunch of that seam allowance, and then I top stitch it because my top stitching thread, a little bit hard to see, is right along the edge of the fabric. So it's really up to you. I don't think that you would feel this. I don't think that that would feel bulky. But if you want it gone, obviously you can make it gone. Okay. You don't have to trim the 1 seam allowance. On flat felled, you do not trim any one. No, you trim them both or none. Any other questions about flat felled seams? We're going to talk a lot more about top stitching here next. Did anybody have like weird bobbin issues on their top stitching thread?
Mine, I had to increase the tension because the top thread was coming all the way through on but that was on like the single layer. It did okay on the double layer or the triple layer.
Yeah, triple layer. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the tension is one of the things we'll talk about with top stitching when we get to that part of the presentation. Going slow, definitely. Increasing the stitch length helps because, you know, the eye of a needle, of a top stitching needle, is so big. So doing anything less than a 4, in my opinion, is just really difficult for your machine to manage. Plus, we've got, like, you know, pretty thick fabrics too. So, all right, I'm going to switch back over to me, I think. Can you guys see me? Yes. Okay, good. Good, good, good. Mine is threads. I don't understand what you're asking. I think there's maybe a typo.
Lindsay,
Yeah.
this is Elizabeth. Can
Hi.
I show you?
Sure.
Can I show you my, okay. Hello.
Hold on, let me find you.
Okay.
Okay, I see. Oh, wait, you just went away.
Oh, am I there?
Hold on. Yes, okay, now I see you. Yes,
Is that right?
I see you. Yep.
Can you see?
No, it needs to be more to the center of your camera. Other way. Oh, there we go. Up higher, higher.
Higher.
Okay, perfect. So what's your question? Does that look okay?
Does that looks all right, right?
Yeah.
That's about
totally.
the right size apart, right?
Yeah, I mean, the distance between them is really up to you.
Mhm.
In my opinion, the bigger the size, the bigger the separation between the top stitching. I think it's just visually like an eye thing.
Mhm.
But like on the Spanx, they're only 1/8 of an inch apart. So it can be whatever you want. I would just make sure that it makes sense for your body type and also do it consistently throughout. Like if you choose 1/4 inch from the get-go, then it has to be 1/4 inch on your pockets, on your back pockets, on your waistband, wherever else it is, it has to be the same. Again, that's just my opinion. You could do, this is your party. You can do whatever you want, and I'm not there. But I think if you want it to be the most ready to wear knockoff, then consistency is key. But all the ones that I showed you other than the Spanx have 1/4 inch distance between. Okay, so I'm going to move along and talk about top stitching, which you guys are practicing now. So you should have a pretty good idea of some, if any of these issues that you are running into. So top stitching tips. Top stitching thread goes through your needle and the stretch thread goes through the bobbin, specifically talking about stretch jeggings. If you're making something like regular jeans, then you'd put polyester in your bobbin. The needles are something that I tend to test out a lot. I'll start with a top stitching needle. If I have bobbin issues, I'll go down to a large stretch needle. And I think that might address the question that we had earlier about it breaking the fibers. I think it depends so much on the fabric and like the density of the fabric, and that trying out both of them really does help. And then with our feet, like we just did, we started out with an edge stitch foot and then used a 1/4 inch foot to get an accurate second stitch after that. And then, so tension is something we didn't talk a lot about, but I've seen people having to increase their tension up to as much as 7.0. Mine is a 4.0 normally. So going up to a 7.0 is actually a pretty significant increase in tension, but that's something you can play around with. I would recommend testing out your thread first, and I'm going to show you an example here in a second, then testing out your needle, then playing around with the tension last. So let me show you what I mean about testing out the thread, and then I'll also show you faux fly and bar tacking tips that I have as well. Let me get it back to my phone. Okay. You guys can see my cutting table? Okay. So this is what I mean about testing out your thread. I, as you guys know, made the itch to stitch jeggings, and I want to show you guys these pockets. So I was basically trying to figure all this out, and I was having no success on my test fabrics. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to do it anyways. No one will ever see. It looks great on the outside. Like, who cares? This was all with Gutermann top stitching thread. Then I ran out of Gutermann top stitching thread. And so I went to my thread stash, and all I had was Coats and Clark. And I said, okay, well, I'll put this in. And this is the same exact setting on my machines with the Coats and Clark thread. Literally no good explanation for why one thread manufacturer produced these results and another one produced these results. Same needle, same tension, same everything. It just turned out perfect. So for whatever reason, my machine just preferred the Coats and Clark thread with this fabric. Now, could that change if I'm using a different fabric? Yes. But for this one, that's all it took to get really pretty results on the inside. Am I bummed that I have all these terrible seams on the inside everywhere else, knowing that it was that easy? Yes, but c'est la vie, right? So that's what I mean about testing out different threads. Have a couple different manufacturers. You've got Coats and Clark, Gutermann, Mettler. What are some others? I can't even think, but they all have their version of a top stitching thread. And so have a bunch of different ones on hand so that you can test those out. All right, now talking about bar tacks. Well, let's talk about flies first. The faux fly on your pant is sewn from the top of your pant. So you are sewing blind. You do not realize that you're catching the faux fly panel in the back. So and I'm going to show you guys here in a second when we talk about the coin pocket template. There's also a template for a fly, and basically it's shaped just like the inner line here. You come in, you trace around it with your, chalk or whatever you've got, and then you go to your machine and you literally follow along the line you just traced for your first pass. Your second pass, you'll still use the 1/4 inch foot or whatever it is, and that's how you get the super accurate separation on the top stitching. But that first one is literally traced in. So if you're somebody who really likes to have that kind of guidance, trace in all of your top stitching. There's no one saying that you can't do that. You absolutely can, especially in these areas where it's highly visible. Trace in that first one and just trace along, and you don't have to worry about using that edge stitch foot at all. Does that make sense? And I'll show you guys this template here. It's not one of mine. It's a resource that I have for you guys where you can download them for free, and they're really, really good. There's one for a coin pocket too. Okay, and then bar tacking. If you guys still have your thread, your machine threaded with the top stitching thread, try out some bar tacking. So bar tacks, and these actually are not great. I don't love how they turned out. The zigzag is too long. You want it to be wide enough that you can see it. You do want it to look intentional, not like a mistake, but you want to have the stitch length be so narrow that they're just barely going on top of each other, one after the next. This one has a little bit too much space in between it for my liking. Let me show you some on, well, I guess we should just go back to Spanx since they tend to be the go-to for this class. Theirs is a lot narrower, but you can see how close, how small the stitch length is. They're going in one after the other, all along together. And they're all usually 1/4 inch long. And they're usually placed around this curve, imagining if this were going to be opened, right? If this were going to be a functioning fly and we're going to open up this zipper, you would have tension somewhere where the curve is just beginning on the innermost curve of the top stitching, and you would have it at the bottom of your zipper, which is what is right here. They also put it on the hip line here at the bottom of this top stitching here. And then, do they have it on their pockets? Yeah, they've even done the top of their, oh, sorry about that. The top of their pockets. This is very difficult to do for home sewists because of this hump here. So typically we just have the box and no bar tacks there, but they are there. And then if you were going to put on belt loops, they go at the bottom of your belt loops as well. So practice some zigzag with a wide-ish zigzag and a narrow or a small stitch length, and see how that goes for you guys. Again, this is another place where you guys will be testing out different needles. You know, is your top stitching thread going to be best here? Probably not, because you're putting all those, the zigzags are so close on top of each other, you might need a smaller eye. But try out the top stitching one. Don't write it off immediately. You're not going to, well, I'm about to say you're not going to break anything. I mean, technically you could probably break something, but proceed with caution. And try out some different bar tacks. See how that goes for you.
Excuse me, I took the top stitching class from Janet Prey, Islander Sewing.
Great.
And one of the things that she suggested when you're starting a project is to do, take a large sample of your fabric, treat it like you're gonna, like if you have interfacing, you're planning on interfacing for top stitching, or if you're gonna do double layers, put it together and then run a bunch of seams. So what she showed us was she had some that had like a 2.5 length and two different tensions. The one tension you could not even see the stitching. The next tension you could see it a little bit. Then she raised the raised the stitch length, changed the experiment with all the different parameters like your threads and things like that. So you know if it's going to turn out the way you want it, rather than discovering it on your jeggings.
Right. And typically what I don't necessarily do all that in the beginning. That certainly makes a lot of sense, but I will keep like a 10 by 10 square of fabric nearby. And when I'm about to do a different kind of stitch, I'll just grab that and then practice it on that as I'm going. So, but yeah, testing it out before you're doing it on your actual jeggings, 1000%, especially with these details that are just so particular, like the top stitching. So yes, I am still using EloFlex in the bobbin for my top stitching. I don't ever take the EloFlex out. You don't necessarily have to have it in there for the bar tacks because there's not a lot of stretch going on. But since it's in there and it takes so little bobbin thread, I just leave it in. Yes, Whitney. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. And it's a fine line between getting the stitch length perfect versus too narrow. So I would err on the side of it being a little bit longer. Like yours, you can see a couple of gaps in there. Nobody's coming at you with a magnifying glass to like exactly inspect like right at your bar tacks. So I thought that looked really good for sure. And again, the stitch width, the width of your zigzag, I think is relative to the size that you're cutting too. I think if you make a larger size pant, you kind of want a larger bar tack, because again, you don't want it to look like a mistake. You want it to look intentional. And if you're wider where the bar tacks are, then you need a bit of a wider zigzag. Okay, so I am going, you guys feel free to keep rocking and rolling, practicing and showing me if you want. I'm going to keep moving along with our presentation as we only have 30 minutes left. So sad. But we're going to start talking about some of these optional details. So the first one is rivets. I showed you some of them in the ready-to-wear versions we looked at and why they exist and what their purpose is. Rivets are super easy to find. Dritz has a kit that comes with the tools that you need as well. You can buy like a separate hand press, but they're expensive. They're like $100. So unless you're cranking out a bunch of different jeggings and jeans where you use a lot of rivets, I would just get the stuff by Dritz. That said, though, the quality of your rivet does matter. I've had people say that they've tried to use the Dritz and the post broke, or some funky thing happened. So if you buy better quality rivets, and you can get them like closet core patterns, how she has her jeans patterns. So she sells hardware kits, but you can't buy just the rivets. You have to buy it in a whole set with buttons and everything else. But I do find that the quality of her kits, like the hardware that she uses in her kits, is really, really good quality. So you can get them from there. Stylemaker Fabrics has a version. You can find these hardware kits at, fabric shops and indie pattern companies for sure. So you can add the rivets if you want. They come in all kinds of finishes too. All right, this is our pocket template resource that I was telling you guys about. So coin pockets are, originally they were to hold pocket watches. Nobody carries those anymore. So now they hold all kinds of other things. I'll say that my boyfriend, Dan, uses his to carry around his vitamins. So when we go to lunch, he has his vitamins ready to go. So for him, it's a pill pocket. And I think that mostly nowadays, though, they really are just decorative. But the last stitch has an exceptional little freebie for everybody. You just give her your website and you get this jeans making toolkit patterns and template set that comes with the coin pocket that you can see on the right of your screen, and instructions on how to put that in. It also comes with a bunch of different pocket bags for your pants. So if your pattern comes with a square pocket and you want a round one, she has one for you on that. She also has the fly template, and I think it comes in 3 different sizes, just like the pocket, the coin pocket does. So thelaststitch.com is where you're going to find that. And it's really, really great. You just give her your email and then it opens up a Google Docs account and you can download them, print them, you own them forever. It's really, really, really awesome. Love that. All right, next we're going to talk about leg shape, and we kind of bounced around this a little bit earlier, but adjusting leg shape is simple, but it's not as simple as some people would maybe want you to believe. So when you adjust from the knee down, you also have to adjust from the knee up. You cannot just take it in from the knee down and everything be fine, because the ease that is put into the leg shape is also put into the back hip area of the pant. Think about a flared leg jean. It's going to be a little bit wider, a little bit roomier in the upper thigh in the back to compensate for the extra fabric on your flared leg. Same thing with the slouch jean. Slouch jean has a ton of ease all through the hip. So you can't just take it in and let it out like that. But to adjust it the right way, Threads has an incredible article that's free. You don't have to be a Threads member to see it, with illustrations and how-tos and all that kind of stuff on where to cut the pattern, how to adjust it, how to bring it in, how to let it out, all that kind of stuff. So that is my go-to resource whenever I'm looking to adjust leg shape. They'll have you adjust the opening as well as the back leg. the upper back leg, which I think is equally as important to get a good look. You don't want a saggy back leg and then a skinny opening. That would not look right. You have to adjust both. Okay, and then our last little exercise today is going to be practicing inserting your ankle zippers. All right, so let me talk you through how to do that. Okay, you guys can see my cutting table, right? Okay, so let's practice it with, well, my machine did not like that fabric. Let's try these two. They're two different weights, but we'll be fine. All right, so the ankle zipper is going to go on the out seam of your pant. That way, when you're walking around, people can see it, right? So you don't have to worry about putting in an ankle zipper where there is a flat felt seam. This is a regular seam. Typically, you have each, the front and the back individually finished, like the raw edges are finished separate from each other. Then you will stitch your, along your stitching line, whatever your seam allowance is, and that becomes your out seam. When we add in an ankle zipper like this, there's just a couple of things that we have to do to prepare the pattern pieces for the zipper. Now, this is kind of a long zipper. Again, it's all about proportion, right? So if you are a petite person, if you're short, I would not do anything longer than a 4-inch zipper. If you're very tall and have very long legs, you can go up to a 6-inch zipper. This is just one I happen to have in my stash, so that's what we're using today. But think about proportion whenever you pick out the length of your zipper. Another thing to keep in mind is the hem of your pant. So we are going to assume that I have a 1-inch hem. So I'm going to draw that in. Can you guys see that? That didn't show up very well for you. So we're going to pretend that this is where my pant ultimately gets pressed up, and then this becomes the hem. Okay. That's important because that tells us where to start our zipper. Now, if this is the hem of the pant, then our zipper is actually going to open from the bottom up, right? It opens from the hem up into the leg. So it goes upside down, right? And you want to place your zipper pull right at the hem line that you just drew in. And then up here where there's a zipper stop, you want to draw in another line that just barely crosses over your seam line. Okay. Once you have those two lines drawn in, then you need to draw in a line, a vertical line that's going to connect these two that is big enough for our seam allowance, but also big enough to let these little teeth show. So when you unzip these, the teeth end up being about 1/8 of an inch. So if our seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch, and then we want to add 1/8 of an inch to that, now we have a 3/4 inch seam line. So I'll draw that in here as well. Obviously, if you have a 1/2 inch and you're adding 1/8 of an inch, you would, just do the 5/8. Just add 1/8 of an inch to whatever your seam allowance is on your pant. Okay, so now we've got a little pretty box. Okay, so we are going to go to our sewing machines and stitching with our ElaFlex thread. We are going to stitch from the top of our pant, imagining this is like our hip line and everything else, all the way down until we get to the corner. It's not even going to be the corner. It's going to be just the inside of this corner. But we're going to come all the way down until we hit this horizontal line and then back stitch there to reinforce that really, really good. Okay, so I'm going to do that off camera because it's just an itty bitty seam, and that way we don't have to finick with the camera too much. Feel free to send over your questions while I'm doing this. All right, I didn't hear any questions coming through, so I'm going to keep on moving forward here. So we've got this situation where I've stopped at the horizontal line. Now I need to cut, similar to if you were doing a welt pocket, you need to cut a diagonal line from the raw edge to the point of your little box that you drew in, like so. Can you guys see that? And this is so we can press these out, right? And it will press all the way out to our new seam line. So go to your ironing boards and press this out. Again, this should be 3/4 of an inch. Okay. All right, quick little press there so that I can show you guys what happens next. So when we turn this right side up, like so, you can now see that we have a cute little opening, right? So we've got our fabrics right side up. We've got our zipper right side up. And you put the zipper underneath your fabrics into the seam, and the stopper should go all the way up to where you where you made that little slit. The stop should go all the way up there. Probably should have pressed those flat. And the folded edge goes along your zipper teeth. Like so. Right? Are you guys getting that? Just get it all in place. A little bit finicky to do, like so quickly, but hopefully you guys are getting the point here. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, now we are going to pin into our zipper tape. So pinning through the fabric, through the zipper tape, you just want to kind of hold all these things together. And I find that I really only have to pin the one side. And then when I start coming around, you know, we're going to sew down here, pivot, come horizontally, and then come down this side. And whenever I come down the other side, I find that because the one side is already stitched down pretty good, that I don't have to worry about that too much. What if we started with this fabric here is 1,000 times easier to manage. My word. Okay. So like this. And then you just keep that fold right in line with the outer part of your teeth. Okay, and then you'll go and you can put on your zipper foot, right? And your zipper foot would be right here, bouncing along on top of the zipper teeth and come all the way down. But honestly, we're not trying to sew super, super close to the zipper teeth. We're more concerned with just getting an even row of stitching that catches that seam allowance. So I actually just like to use my regular presser foot and just ping it all the way to the left. And that gives me a consistent 1/8 of an inch all the way down. You just have to be really careful. Like, see how this is covering my teeth? We don't want that. You have to be really careful in your pinning, or like, you know, when you're sewing it, to keep the fabric away from the teeth. Like so. And then, like I said, once we get down, sew down, and then you come and you pivot, You pivot around the zipper stop. You come horizontally across here, again at another like 1/8 of an inch. This fabric is way too drapey for this demonstration. I picked the wrong one. But then you'll come across horizontal, then you'll pivot again and come all the way back down. This would be flat. Your seam allowances above the zipper stop would be flat, and you'd get those little corners out of the way. Are you guys getting this? How are yours looking okay? Is anybody stitching it down? Or y'all just watching? Watching's fine. But it is a really, really cute detail. And when you get it all sewn on, we're going to pretend that that's what I've done here. You would put a bar tack above the zipper stop. So a bar tack would go up here. That is, again, that actually does serve a purpose. It would be to, if you did unzip this, it would keep everything nice and in its place, and you know, all the wear and tear that would take. But once you get this sewn on and you have it hemmed, which, you know, you hem it under like this. Making sure the tape is within your hem. It would look like this, but stitched, obviously. And then you'd be able to unzip your cutie little seam. How fun is that, right? It's a great little detail that you don't see in a lot of ready to wear. Literally none of the options that I have that. And I think that's because it's, you know, so expensive for manufacturers to do. But for us, it's like not that big of a deal. Okay. I mean, I genuinely think I finally got all this figured out. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes of class left, 15 minutes. So I'd like to answer any questions. Oh, we were going to talk about back pockets. Oh, shoot. Let me do that really quickly, and then we will, and then we can take questions. This is only going to take a few minutes. So back pockets. Again, we've talked a lot about proportion, right? We've talked a lot about, like, you know, the size that you make determines your bar tacks, determines how wide your top stitching width is. But I want to talk about back pockets because this, to me, is one of the biggest fallacies of ready to wear. Katrina, I'll get to your question here after I'm done talking about pockets. You can see that from pant to pant, these pockets are very different. Maybe they don't look that different, but they are different. First of all, we've got the size, right? The width of the spank is 5 inches. The width of this, who knows what brand, is 5.5 almost. 5 inches versus 5.5 almost. An extra 1/2 inch, that's going to make a big deal on a booty. If you have a larger bum, you want a larger pocket. If you have an itty bitty pocket on a big bum, guess what it does? It makes that bum look even bigger. Then we have the idea, once you have your size figured out, and what I do is I have one back pocket that I use for all my pants. If I'm doing a patch pocket, that's the pocket that I grab because I know that size pocket looks good on my bum. The next thing we have to contend with is the shape of the pocket. So if you look at this, and this might be a little bit hard to see, like not in person, but this is not symmetrical from one side to the other. Down here in this area is different. This is actually a little bit more angled than this is. This is flatter and this is more angled. And again, I know that it's hard to tell with looking at it on camera, but take my word for it. They are not symmetrical, nor should they be, because your bum is not like a ball. It's not a perfect sphere. If you have like a bubble butt where it protrudes more in the center versus wide hips that protrude more like widthwise, this is going to help kind of camouflage some of those, I don't want to call them inconsistencies. It's just, you know, that's what's going to camouflage the fact that your bum is not a perfect orb. You also have the angle of the pocket. So you can see that this angles up pretty dramatically. This is a very steep angle, whereas this one is a little bit more subtle. You can see the difference between it and the waistband. The other ones, these here, are actually angled down. So you have these that are angled up, you have these that are angled down, which kind of follow and mimic the line of the yoke a little bit better. And again, that is all in, should all be in proportion to your body. I prefer an angled down pocket because I have more of a bubble, but if it's angled down, it kind of draws the eye to the higher part and not so much to the center of my backside. So I prefer an angled down pocket versus an angled up one. And the way that you're able to determine what size pocket should be angled down, angled up, you know, the shape of it, you know, all this kind of stuff is you would make your jegging, you would make a pocket, you pin the pocket on. I rarely ever pin my pocket in the exact same place that the pattern says. Maybe I'll start there, but then you stand in front of your camera self-timer and you take a bunch of pictures of your backside. And you're, you know, just play around with it, use extremes, and you'll be able to tell which pocket size and which pocket angle is more flattering on your body. There is a study that someone done, like a literal study where they, you know, did experiments where they took the same girl and put her in a whole bunch of different jeans with a whole bunch of different back pockets and took pictures of her backside. And it looked like a different girl every time. It looked like, oh, well, that's a bigger girl. Oh, well, that's a smaller girl. Oh, well, she has bubble butt. Oh, she's whiter, depending solely on the back design of the jean in general, but also the pocket. So the back pocket is not, even though it's like the last step, well, sometimes they have you do it as you're assembling your back pattern pieces, but it shouldn't be one of those, just throw it on and forget about it. We never see it as the wearer, but everybody else that's looking at us, they will see, and that will determine how our bum appears to others. Maybe that's not super important to you, but if it is, the back pocket is certainly an area that you would need to focus on. Okay, so Katrina, I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a YouTube channel called Inside the Hem. Yes, Inside the Hem. It's also a website if you'd like to go there. I have lots of freebies, lots of sewing resources, sew-alongs, all of those fun things that you can check out. Basically, my whole business lives on the internet. So are there any other questions as we kind of wrap up here? I do prefer, Elizabeth is asking if I prefer wider elastic. I personally prefer wider elastic, but that's because I have like gut health issues, for lack of a better term. And so my belly protrudes. I have inflammation sometimes and sometimes I don't. So the wider elastic to me makes me feel a little bit more, I don't know, nipped and tucked, especially on those uncomfortable days. So I prefer a wider elastic. But that said, the wider waistband out of this really stretchy fabric does kind of make up for that a little bit. But if I can have both, I would probably take both. The other important thing about elastic is that the elastic that they sell at Joann, in my opinion, is not comfortable at all. I much prefer a soft knit elastic to whatever it is that they sell there. And I like to get mine from Style Maker Fabrics. The only thing is that they don't have super wide widths. They only have the smaller widths, but I don't have an elastic brand because I don't know that they're identified online by brands, but the one that Style Maker has, the soft knit elastic, is really, really good. And Wawak, W-A-W-A-K, they sell like, oh, sorry, I have some sirens going by. They have some, like they sell professional grade notions, and they have really, really great elastic there too that you can get in a bunch of different sizes. But I don't like the Dritz. I don't like anything you can get in Joann. I don't like any of that stuff. I mean, that is like a last resort if I'm like desperate to finish something. Yeah, okay, so Whitney's asking about belt loops. So the way that you make belt loops, let me see if I can explain it here. Okay, thank you. We got 5 minutes left, they're saying. So basically you take your belt loop width, which is normally, I think, 1 inch, maybe a little bit more, and you cross it over into thirds. So you make a little sandwich with thirds, and then you top stitch down, and you do a whole length of it. And then you cut it to the 2 inches or 2 1/4, or whatever it is, length that you need. You would typically sew it into the top of the waistband, and then like it's sewn into that seam, and then you fold it down, fold the raw edge under, top stitch or bar tack along the bottom part of the waistband. Does that make sense? So typically it is sewn, this part is sewn into the waistband. You can see they've top stitched both ends of theirs, but I've seen it where this is sewn into the waistband, folded over, and then top stitched down here. But yeah, all of these are made in one long strip. Another great use for your cover stitch machine. You just fold it into thirds, run it through your cover stitch, one long length, and then you trim them all to equal amounts. Do you sew the side seams over the elastic so it does not roll? Do you sew the side? Not understanding that. It won't roll because it's top stitched into the waistband. Does that make sense? So like on here, it's sewn into the understitching. It's attached to the understitching, so it doesn't roll around in there at all. Does that help, Elizabeth? Good. All right, any other last minute questions? Like I said, I'll be sending all of you guys this in an email. If you get any of these patterns and start working on your jeggings, you have questions as you're sewing through it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm available always, either email, DM me on social media. All of those are great places to find me. Katrina, IMHO is in my humble opinion. Did I say that? Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Liz. I'm curious, where did you see IMHO? Must have been in the presentation, I guess.
I put it in.
Working on that.
I put it in my comment. This is Whitney. It was in my comment about the belt loops.
Oh, Whitney said it. Okay. Yes, in my humble opinion. That's so funny. Good, Jerry. I'm excited too. If you guys end up making jeggings and using any of these techniques and you post your stuff to social media, please tag me. I would love to see how they come out. Yay, good. Me too. Me too. I need to make a second pair. I love that first pair so much. It's gotten worn to death. So I need to do a second pair utilizing a lot of the things that I learned from making that first pair. All right, Amina is kicking us out. So thank you all so much. I will see you on the internet. Bye, you guys.